Hey YouTube, welcome back to another episode of Miles and Bodyweight Training. Today's video is actually going to be about hand balancing and my update and progress to date. Now I understand that I haven't done a video for an absolute millennia. Ultimately work has gotten in the way and I've had to prioritize that and my training over YouTube, which is sad, but finding that balance is all part of life and the balance is almost being found, so I'm able to start doing videos again and hopefully we'll keep regularity with videos. So as I said before, today's video is going to be on my handstand balancing progression, and I've actually come quite a long way, so I'm happy to just go over everything that I've been doing and let's get cracking. So basically I'm going to start by going over the skill set, where I'm at now. Since my last video, I'm actually more advanced, I would say, in my skill set and perfecting the handstand itself, because that's a constant development, and it's easy to get lost in the technicals of the handstand to favor the skills, but I'm always pushing for a focus on achieving a really good optimal handstand. So we'll start with the skill set. Like I said, the first skill I am going to bring to your attention, as you can see in this video, is my L-sit to straddle press to handstand, and then I actually come down in a negative to a V-sit, and I'm going to talk about why I do the V-sit at the end. But ultimately this skill came from just a real focus in the skill itself, something I've really wanted to achieve. So with all the strength work that I do, this was the one that I tried and tried and tried. And there was a lot of sort of training in development to this. The L-sit to sort of high press was one of the exercises that I do quite often. I come down into the V-sit to add an element of stress to the body, and a focus on, you know, keeping the work up. I'm working on doing multiple of these, but I'm not quite there. So in order to increase my overall capacity, I come down into the V-sit and hold that ultimately for as long as I want, or can, should I say. The next skill is the shoulder press to handstand. This took me somewhat way longer to achieve, and I think there's an important key that comes out of this, but it took me longer than I thought it was going to achieve, but that was down to my own limitations. It's a very different movement, almost, well, it's not very different, it's a similar movement to the L-sit to handstand, but you have to hold your legs out in a position and keep them up, which means that the compression requirement for that, and the compression requirement is the ability to pull your knees or your feet towards your head, is very, very challenging. When your legs are out wide and straddled, I find that a lot harder to do because my straddle isn't that great. So putting that in mind, and then just doing that and attempting the skill was huge for me, because it was towards the end of a session, one of the personal trainers at the gym was like, "Are you going to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this." And I had that positivity in my mind, and I just went through it. And the key to all of this when you're trying a skill for the first time properly is to just really contract and push, because if you have an idea in your head that you're trying to make it look easy through an effortless motion, then you're not going to put in the contraction and the work needed to actually perform it for the first time. It was the same for straddle pressing into a handstand. It's the same for pike pressing into handstand. I needed to contract and really push my body to be able to achieve the skill. Something else that I've added, and the additions of skills and training that I add is almost micro progressions, because I can't do something necessarily for the full of it or for multiple reps, so I pick something that's a little bit more demanding, or quite a lot demanding depending on, you know, any given day. And so I'm always training at the, you know, the end rate of my capacity. And something that you can see now is the tuck handstand, which is working on my control with my legs in a different position. It's not that hard, but when I add the negative tuck planche to it, I'm having to recruit everything on the way down and then keep myself in a planche. And I find this is massive benefit to A, my control, and B, my planche progression, which is something that I'm massively focusing on. And a lot of my planche focus again is increasing my straight arm pressing strength. which I love because it helps me now do things like the shoulder press and the L sit to handstand press. So I'm not going to say no to it, but the decision had to come from me to say, okay, let's focus on planche, and it has a massive byproduct of my straight arm strength, like I've said. A couple of other skills that I've incorporated into my training a lot now is the pirouette, which is basically trying to turn and rotate on the spot. This was at the end of my session, so I tend to chuck this in at the end of my session because it doesn't cost much now for me to just kick up into handstand, but then adding this when the brain's a little bit fatigued and having to really focus on keeping control through a different type of movement, I find it's very, very helpful. Or just to increase the control. If I put this in at the beginning when it's easier to do the handstand, I don't really get much from it because my mind's fresher and I'm not really pushing myself to be able to achieve it. Another skill that I've always dabbled in and I just try to keep there every so often is the Japanese handstand. Now I don't train this really ever. I do one sort of progression to increase my shoulder strength when my arms are in this position, which is just have dumbbells in my hand, and I go through a pressing motion like so with the weight. And I always advocate training with some form of weight because you're able to really quantify your physical strength at any given time, whether you're fatigued or whatever. At least you have a number to attach it to. I break up the Japanese handstand into two parts. One is the press part of it and getting you into the handstand, and the other is the balance. That's obvious, but because I don't practice it, I have no real concept of how to balance in this position. Of course I have a concept, but because I don't do it, I suck at ultimately holding it. But the pressing element of it is getting a lot better, and the strength needed with my arms as straight as they can be, it's a lot better now. I just can't hold it, as you've seen in the video. I roll out of it more or less straight away. So they're the skills and where I'm at with my handstands. How I've gotten there, that's what I want to sort of shift my focus and attention to now. And there's a few things actually, which we hopefully will find useful. The first one is my overall fitness and capacity. Now, I made a decision a few weeks ago to say to myself, okay, coming from the sport I used to do previously, and it was just a given that you needed aerobic fitness to increase your overall capacity. This works across the board with anything that you're doing. If you have a higher aerobic capacity, your ability to train higher will just exist. And not only that, your ability to recover, which I think is even more important, is also greatened, which means that you can do more in a set, you can do more in a week, and so on and so forth, because your actual overall ability is greater. And then if you're training more and you add more volume to it, then you'll get better that way as well. So it's a massive positive circle. It's a catch-22, but better than a catch-22 because it's positive, right? So that I think has massively helped. And there's an added element of excitement because since track cycling, nothing has ever really pushed my body to the point where I want to pass out and vomit in a session. Not that you should want to really pass out and vomit, but it's an indicator of how hard you're pushing your body, and I like limits or establishing limits and trying to break through them. So doing the circuit training where I focus on 45 seconds of work and 45 seconds of rest for about 8 exercises, and I do incorporate the legs side of training as well with box jumps or sled pushes or whatever I want to do, just to really get the heart rate going because they're a big muscle group, but without obviously training my legs to get mass and size. So yes, definitely aerobic training has helped massively with the way in which I train now. Another thing that's massively helped me is shifting my focus onto just really pushing through an exercise, and almost not caring that it's an ultimately staying in your comfort zone, which is very, very easy to do, especially with something like the handstand when you're in an environment like the gym and you're just doing handstands, and okay, it's impressive or whatever, but I think in the back of my mind, if someone sees me fall from a handstand, there's almost like, oh, you don't want people to see you. You always want them to see you doing the exercise well. Not that I really care too much about what other people think. If you know me, you'll understand that. But there still is something in the back of the mind that doesn't want to seem, I guess, inadequate or not be able to do the perform the exercise. And obviously attempting a skill for the first time and not succeeding is a prime example of that. But stripping that away and just going for certain things because you don't know where you are and you can't know where you're at until you do it. So obviously it makes sense just to try stuff and push through it. And that's the other thing, is pushing hard, because when you're attempting a skill for the first time that's a strength-based skill, you have to recruit the body and really force it, because your form potentially won't be very good. And if you're waiting for your form to almost carry you through, it's really not going to work. You have to stress the body so the body can then adapt to that stress. And then the elegance and the effortless appearance of what you're doing will follow very quickly. And then I guess another thing that massively helps is regaining my focus to YouTube training. Now, of course, YouTube videos, I guess it's YouTube training, but YouTube videos and having content to show you guys who are watching the video, which really does put a positive spin on the training that I do, because without the content, obviously I've got nothing to show, and I want to show you better content to inspire or whatever. So having the focus of YouTube really does help, and especially for filming this video, it gave me a nice mental buzz to put my focus into the training session. So yeah, I kind of want to leave it there. I think I've said this before in the past, but I do want to make an effort to bring out more content. And like I said, that's just going to help my focus and training ability, and it's going to hopefully spiral into a great deal of content that comes to YouTube. So as always, thank you very, very, very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, like, share it, whatever. But thank you, and I will be back with another video very soon.